Okay. Let's get right into it. These two books have really nothing in common. I just like these quotes, and so I want to talk about them. So on page 230, Coming of Age in Mississippi, Anne Moody is the first woman ever in the history of, I don't know, John Master's life, my biography, 33 years on this planet. The first woman ever to tell me the truth. And it was fascinating. So this page 230, she's gone to college, Coming of Age in Mississippi. This is Anne Moody. She grows up through the civil rights era, from segregation to, freedom. And when she's in Natchez College, she actually, starts a rebellion in the kitchen. The kitchen food wasn't any good, so she starts a rebellion. But before then, she's kind of having the same, she actually hates Natchez College even worse than, her parents' house, because they said that there was more control over her behavior at Natchez College. But this is about male and female relationships, okay? So here's the passage. It's the third paragraph on the top. From the top. Okay, from the top. Because Natchez College was so small, most of the relationships between girls and boys were a public thing. Everybody knew everybody else's business. The students were all shocked when I started going with Kemp, especially the sophomore boys who had tried to make it with me the year before. A couple of the guys who had tried hardest came up and bluntly asked me, what did I see in Kemp, or what did Kemp have to offer me that they didn't? I was a little surprised at the girls' reaction. Most of them seemed glad that I had finally decided to join the club, so much so that they started giving me all kinds of advice on how to handle men. This is, I look at a dormitory, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe 100 women, maybe less, African-American. What was that? Is that a noise? Why are you making noises? Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. So, it's a small college, right? Everybody knows everybody, about 100 black males and 100 black females. And, it was interesting first about the men who had pursued her and she had rejected them. They went back up and they're like, so, what the fuck? What? I'm not cute enough. I'm not as good looking as him. What has he got that I ain't got? And I thought that was interesting. How they just bluntly asked it, right? But then the girls' reactions, that's more important, okay? So, she was surprised at the girls' reaction. Most of them were glad. Most of the women, young women, she's saying females, right? She's using girls. But most of the women were glad that she had joined the club. Finally, you're getting, you're being a woman, I guess, being a wife, or being finding a relationship, finding a mate, which traditionally was the only role for women. But not only were they happy that she had joined their club, but now they were all telling her a bunch of advice on how to handle men, how to handle them, how to control them, how to tell them what to do, how to say, look at this, look at that, and just control them. That is your slave. That is your thing. You will control them, and that's huge. I think that's really big, because if the entire problem of the world is hierarchy, the oppressors versus the oppressed, and women have been trained from this is all the women. This is like the majority of them, right? It says so much they started giving me all kinds of advice on how to handle men. Most of them seemed glad. Most of these women were giving her advice on how to handle the man. Oh, here's how you handle him, okay? Whenever he wants sex, you say no. First, do this, this, and this. Always give him 3 things to do, and then, you get some stuff done, and you get to have some sex at the end. Men, what stupid whores. And so I think that's important. That's important, and there is definitely a different culture. Men and women are coming at the relationship from different perspectives, and I'm glad that we have a co-ed education. I'm glad that we have a co-ed education, system right now. It's all integrated, right? Male, female, black, white. But there's so much differences, I feel like, with men and women. I don't know. Maybe it's the beautiful women that really But even, like, unattractive women, they seem to have, you know, that sort of resting bitch face. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. My thing, I guess what I'm trying to say, essentially, is I don't, you know, traditionally, the woman was submissive. The woman was, you know, yes, sir, whatever you say, whenever he tells her what to do, but because she is the object of his affection, he's got to win her over and he's got to treat her nice. So she has to get something out the deal. Like, all right, fine, I'll be, you know, I'll do what you're telling me, but you got to do what I tell you. And so it's just a battle of wills. Is that what equality is? Where you sometimes are obedient to each other, or is equality 100% complete freedom? I'm wildly free, she is wildly free, and then magic. Magic, the magic of love, the power of love keeps us together. I err on the side of caution, so I err on the side of complete freedom, wild freedom. I am wildly free, she is wildly free. No one's handling me. So I think that's a big point. If, you know, if women are thinking that they're going to handle, I handle my husband, you know, that's what I felt like actually with Spalding University, that they were, you know, fairly attractive women who had husbands who they shit on, do this, do that because I'm the boss. And then they would come into the school, and then they would act as if the men were supposed to be beneath them at the school. And, you know, I think that's total horseshit. I think it's total horseshit for many reasons. I will bring this one example up. I got into an argument with a lady online. She was being shitty to me, but then turned around and was like, why are you picking on me? Which is bullshit, you know. It reminds me of, like, Tulsa race riots, where the little old man starts to try to take the gun out of the black man's hands, and then that starts this big race riot, you know, group, a band of black and white men were all, you know, cocked and loaded and ready to go. And, you know, it was a standoff, right, Mexican standoff, until this little old man starts to go up to one of the black men and just act like he's like, oh, give me that gun, you know, damn nigger taking my gun. And, you know, in some respects, if it was any other day, if it wasn't like, you know, such a standoff, you could just be like, oh, old Bob, you know, stop doing that, old Jim Bob, what you doing, Jim Bob? But he started a race riot, and they were bombing people had died, and it all culminated because a little old man tried to take a gun out of a black man's hands. Now, I could see some oppressors walking away from that initial encounter with that little old man, little Jim Bob, taking a gun out of, you know, a black man's hands. And if the black man pushed little Jim Bob down, they would be like, oh my God, why did he have to push old Jim Bob down? Little old Jim Bob? Why did he do that? Why did they do that to poor little Jim Bob? and you know, that's Samantha Ramsey got shot, right? She got shot. Now, if women want to handle their men, well, they got to have a man, you know, of, I guess, character to handle, right? So they want to be able to handle power, rich, money. If you got rich, you got power. But what happens when those people in power are corrupt? So I think it's you know, I welcome women into the workforce. I'm a feminist. I see this with men. I think there's a lack of morality and there's a lack of ethics. But I believe women are a nation. And if you could convince one woman of, you know, being moral, let's say, taking a stand out against police brutality. If you could convince one woman to stand up against police brutality, you've changed the nation. You've changed all her kids. You've changed her friends. You've chased any of the men that are chasing after her. You've changed the nation. And so instead of women just trying to handle their men, you know, it's 1960s, so if they're only going to be a housewife, perhaps that's the only power that they could have. But if you're getting power, you got money, you're in the workforce, and, you know, you have a life, then I don't see why you would want to come home and just, you know, treat your partner in life, partner in crime, right, your partner like they're a slave. Because I don't want to be a slave. Traditionally, men told women what to do. I'm against that. I don't believe in domestic violence. I don't, you know, I very much am opposed to this. And so I'm no master and I'm not a slave. I don't want to be the boss because that would be exhausting. Oh, my God, to always have to be on someone, be like, who are you looking at? Where are you going, chasing her from, you know? So I'm going to go to the store. Oh, yeah, you fucking someone? You fucking the clerk, huh? What you doing? Now I'm going with you. You know, that would suck. That would suck. And and so I don't want to be the boss, and I don't want to be the slave, because, you know, to be the slave means your humanity is crushed and you're a nobody. So that was eye-opening for me. It was like kind of the first time that someone had told me that women are privileged. I mean, I don't know men who sit around all day just thinking about how to control their women. This is totally random out of the blue, and I'll mention it just, I don't know, for entertainment's sake. But there was I was working as a cook at the Hamburger Mary's. It was a gay restaurant in Cincinnati, which that's just the setting. And there was a guy that had actually taught me. He had a voice like DMX. Hey, what you doing? And he had told me that if you ever get into it with your woman, if she's hitting you, you just got to bop her on top of the head, because then it leaves no marks. I've actually heard a woman tell me the exact same thing. When she was a kid, the cops were called for child abuse, but when the cop got there, they said, look, you're allowed to discipline your kids, you just can't leave any marks. So, you know, that was, I laughed about it, because it's kind of like, oh, that's actually really smart, right? If you're a person who needs to use force, but you don't want to get caught at it. If you hit the top of the head, you know, it hurts and it confuses them, but don't leave any marks. So, but that wasn't like a long conversation. It was just kind of I don't know. It was something that was said. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he was actually worse than what I had thought. He seemed like an okay guy. I didn't take it as like, oh, yes, now I finally know how. I've got the power. Now I know how to handle women. Just pop them on top of the head. So most of the men that I know adore and love their women, and you know, it gives me the impression that women take love, they don't give it. Of course, women love love because they, you know, benefit off of it. There's up the road here, there's a woman who is not attractive at all, but she still, you know, has got the goods, and so she's able to, you know, shake what little nothing that she has. And doesn't have to have a job and gets other people to, you know, take her places and buy her things. So, you know, that's a different life. That's a whole nother life. That's not a life I understand. It's not a life that I even, you know, even if I wanted to aspire to it, I could never aspire to something like that, because that's just not, you know, what I'm. I don't know. There are some men that kind of live on working women's, you know, graces. So, you know, I guess for every one example on one side, there's another example on the other. I'm not saying men or women. This is about women. This is why I'm kind of focused on women. But women disappoint me. Men, I mean, I've basically given up on men. Men are just assholes, right? Some of them are decent, but the fucking large majority of them are just fucking assholes. So, thank you, Ann Moody, for telling me the truth. You know, all the girls are telling her how to handle the men. That was the advice, how to handle their men. Now, the other quote, the other book that I want to read is All Quiet on the Western Front, which I already mentioned, Enrique Maria Remarque, the greatest war novel of all time. It sold a ton of novels once they eventually got it published. And this passage starts right in the very beginning. There is no, you know, these are just two good quotes out of books that I've been wanting to document and point out because I've thought about them, and, you know, they've come across my mind several times. So they really have no comparisons. They do mention school, though. In the school, there's a schoolmaster that we're going to talk about, Cantoric. So this Cantoric is this little old schoolmaster who actually got the Germans to enlist in World War I. And World War I was really bad for everybody. Everybody was demoralized about war. War was not a fun adventure after World War I. It wasn't a heroic, you know, thing for men to get into and, you know, help their mother country. They were just peasants, pawns for the war machine. That's all they were, pawns for the war machine, just sacrificial lambs. And but it was a school teacher that had, you know, encouraged them to enlist. So the school teachers got a job sitting in peaceful settings, teaching these 18-year-olds about what the fuck ever. And then in the midst of teaching about what the fuck ever, they was like, hey, by the way, why don't y'all just go join up for the war and get your balls shot off? So there's the only comparison that I see between the two books is about school. The Natchez College was oppressive, and this Cantoric, he sounds like a total asshole. So this is actually about 2 pages, page 10, on the bottom. Cantoric, had been our schoolmaster, a stern little man in a gray tailcoat with a face like a shrew mouse. He was about the same size as Corporal Himmelstoss, the Terror of Klosterberg. It is very queer that the unhappiness of the world is so often brought on by small men. That makes me think of Napoleon. It makes me think of short, bald men, short, bald, fat men who become cops. These little men who, want to, maybe they got picked on in school or got picked on or something, or just always want to establish their manhood. They, for some reason, they're the ones that create a lot of misery throughout the entire world. Hitler was pretty short. I remember a South Park episode where George W. Bush and Saddam Hussein, at the very end, it showed that it was just about their dick size. They were just had little dicks, and so they were, want to show how strong they are by sending all these poor boys into a war that they themselves would never go into. So that's a good quote. Why are a lot of unhappiness of the world brought on by small men? They're so much more energetic and uncompromising than the big fellows. Little ones are just more energetic, uncompromising. I have always taken good care to keep out of sections with small company commanders. They are mostly confounded little martinets. During drill time, Kantork gave us long lectures until the whole of our class went under his shepherding to the district commandant and volunteered. I can see him now as he used to glare at us through his spectacles, right, like a stuck-up fucking yuppie snob, and say in a moving voice, "Won't you join up, comrades?" Now, Prussia is where the American education system came from, Germany. Germany is where the American education system that we have today came from, Germany. Kindergarten, that's a German word for garden of children, or garden for children or something. So that's Germany. We adopted the German education system, and we believe in 100% compliance. So this Kantork is saying, shut up, sit down, listen to what I have to say about history, music, what the fuck ever, right? He's the boss. And then while he has 100% authority, he was like, oh, by the way, why don't y'all just go ahead and throw your damn lives away? And they did. These teachers always carry their feelings ready in their waistcoat pockets and trot them out by the hour. But we didn't think of that then. Just like the principal in Cloverport. Short, bald, insecure, piece of shit, right? Doesn't care that there's no democracy, no civics, so the republic is going down, right? In 2008, we about blew up the whole world. But nah, let's just keep marching to the same tune. Let's just keep doing the same bullshit that we did, that we've been doing the entire fucking time. That's why there's strict obedience. The reason why the Germans established an education system was because of Napoleon. Napoleon had conquered the Germans easily, within a few days. Let's say the Battle of Jena, Ulster Stats or something, 1806. And after the Germans got smashed handedly, they're kind of like, what the fuck does Napoleon have? Because their troops are ready to die. They were ready to die for our greater cause, to die for France, to die for the revolution, to die for freedom. And so why, the Germans were running away. They were, mostly mercenaries. So they were kind of like, well, shit, I don't want to fucking die. I'm not going to go into, a suicide, I'm not going to kamikaze myself into the middle of the field. And so that's what they did. That's what the Germans did. They got the education system to teach that the state is number one. Be obedient to your school teacher, just like you're obedient to the civil servants, cops, governors, presidents, on and on and on. And so that's our modern education system. That's the fucking point. So there was indeed one of us who hesitated and did not want to fall into line. So you gotta push that motherfucker in line. Hey, get in line, boy. Right? Capitulate. That's another thing. Hitler, when he conquered all them countries, I think he took Austria just by being a bully. He just fucking bullied the leader of Austria until the leader of Austria was like, all right, fine, you can have the whole damn country. He capitulated. And it was just a diplomatic capitulation. It was just, he invited the guy in, and then he was inside the palace, and then he got, surrounded by all these goons, and then he's kind of like, oh, shit. All right, fine, take the fucking country. Another thing, Napoleon made the entire Holy Roman Empire capitulate in a fucking day. the same time that he conquered the Germans. So to teach capitulation to children when they're in kindergarten, and to teach them to capitulate from kindergarten till they're 18 years old, well, they're not going to make great leaders. They're slaves. They're servants. It's a mentality to teach, young men to be cannon fodder for the war machine, and for everybody else to be, not everybody can be the king. 99% of the people have to be peasants. So the school is more or less getting them ready for their peasantry. You need to be a good peasant. You need to be productive, find work, be able to read and write, basic stuff, but you don't need to think for yourself. You don't need independence. And you need, you just need to be happy with your, there's winners and there's losers, and the system, we're going to make it look like it's fair, but it's really rigged. And if you're a loser, you just have to accept it, accept that you did not do well in the sort of Hunger Games type of atmosphere in the school system. Okay, so what happened to this guy? That was Joseph Behm. So Joseph Behm, B-E-H-M, a plump, homely fellow. But he did allow himself to be persuaded, otherwise he would have been ostracized. Peer pressure. So once the schoolmaster was able to get 5 of the 6, I think, right, 6 people, I think they said went, once they got 5 of the 6, all of them but one, to go join, the one person didn't want to be left out. So, fuck it, I'll throw my life away too. So, and perhaps more of us thought as he did, but no one could very well stand out, because at that time, even one's parents were ready with the word coward. No one had the vaguest idea what we were in for. The wisest were just the poor and simple people. They knew the war to be a misfortune, whereas those who were better off and should have been able to see more clearly what the consequences would be were beside themselves with joy. Kaczynski said that was a result of their upbringing. It made them stupid, and what Katz said he always had thought about. Strange to say, Joseph Behm was one of the first to fall. Joseph Behm, the one who was reluctant to join the German war machine, and it was German aggression, right? Or maybe, I don't know, it was World War I. What was the reason for World War I? Most people don't even fucking know, because it's so goddamn confusing, all these weird alliances and shit. But it's basically really simple. The Archduke Franz Ferdinand gets assassinated, and I'll say in Sarajevo. So he's not even in his fucking country visiting, well, I don't know, I guess he assumed that that is my country. So he's in their fucking place, and when he's there, he gets assassinated by Princip, a guy named Princip, an anarchist, a Serb. He was doing it for Serbian nationalism, and I think I don't know if there's a Serbia today or if there's the Serb people, but I think it was actually, in the long run, a good idea, because they killed the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Now, the way that countries used to rule themselves, now we got nation-states, democracy, elections, but before it was just kings and queens. It'd be one fucking guy who gets the fucking power, and then he says, divine right, God, whatever, it means his sons get to become king after him, and nobody else, everybody else is out. They're the only royal people. Now, the one good thing that I could say that comes out of something like that is that there's a sense of nationalism, a sense of pride. France, what do we understand as France? On the map, we see France and their democratic republics today, but before France was a democratic republic, it was a succession of kings and queens and princes and princesses. So, because you had one face that symbolized the whole nation, then the whole nation could rally behind that one face. So, I think it's bullshit, because, what the fuck is a king and queen but just a peasant with better clothes, with more luxurious goods, and just somebody who was able to get the power. How did the first people get power? Probably by force, probably by a coup d'etat, and that's not legitimate. So Behm is the first one that dies, okay, and he got hit in the eye. So this is how he had died. So he got hit in the eye during an attack, and we left him lying for dead. We couldn't bring him with us because we had to come back helter-skelter. Had to get the hell out of there. In the afternoon, suddenly, we heard him call and saw him crawling about in no man's land. He'd only been knocked unconscious. He was still alive. He got shot in the eye, but he couldn't see, and then he was trying to crawl around. He'd only been knocked unconscious. Because he could not see and was mad with pain, He failed to keep under cover and so was shot down before anyone could go and fetch him in. So he was, you know, they watched him fucking struggle and die, and then they left him die on the fucking battlefield. Right? Just like in the fucking classroom. If he gets an F, if he flunks out, fuck him. Who gives a shit? It's all about listening to this Katork. That little short man, little short bald man, right? With a face like a shrew mouse. Katork. Naturally, we couldn't blame Katork for this. Where would the world be if one brought every man to book? There were thousands of Katorks, all of whom were convinced that they were acting for the best in a way that cost them nothing. So, you know, these fucking educators, these Katorks, they, like I said, they got money, they got jobs, they got prestige. They get to stay in a peaceful soil while they tell the young people to go out and die so they can maintain their fucking lifestyle. And they think they're doing good because, you know, they're being obedient to the state, the Katorks, the teachers are, and they're saying, hey, young people, you know, fight for the state. And so I didn't finish off why Germany was even involved. So the Hungarian, you know, the Duke, he's like the fucking vice president. He's not even the main guy. He's just the Duke, right? He's not the king of, or the emperor of Austria-Hungary. So you had like the Prussian Empire, the Austria-Hungarian Empire. You had a bunch of different empires. But there was when the Duke got shot, then Austria-Hungary felt like they had to do something about it. And so they offered an ultimatum. And they told Serbia that you must submit and you must say that all your lands are now ours without any argument, without any debate. You know, stop the bullshit. We don't want to have, like, you know, this gray area. This is kind of your land. This is kind of my land. No, this is all my land. And when Austria-Hungary had offered the ultimatum, which was pressed on by Germany, Germany pushed Austria-Hungary to do the ultimatum. But just because you pressured someone, that doesn't really fall into their lap. That isn't the Germans' fault. It was Austria-Hungary's fault. And ultimately, Austria-Hungary is wiped out. They are no more after the end of World War I. So, you know, the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand by Prince Seip turned out to be good for the Serbs. And it killed an empire. But the Germans' involvement was that they had pushed the Austrian-Hungarian king to press for the ultimatum. And the ultimatum is essentially what the whole world broke out in the war, because the Russians had said that, you know, don't do the ultimatum, and if Austria-Hungary attacks, we will defend you. So the Serbs had their allies, and then the Austria-Hungary had the Germans, and so everybody was sort of, you know, oh, I'm on this side, I'm on this side, and then all this, you know, then shit just fucking hit the fan. You know, once the murder and once the killing started, you know, people, and then a lot of times kings and queens think that war is good for the state. It's a good, healthy thing for the state. It's when they get to make their name for themselves. It's when they get to get into the history books, when they start a war. So that is why they let us down so badly. There were thousands of Katorks, all of whom were convinced that they were acting for the best in a way that cost them nothing. And that's why they let us down so badly. For us lads of 18, they ought to have been mediators and guides to the world of maturity, the world of work, of duty, of culture, of progress to the future. We often made fun of them and played jokes on them, but in our hearts, we trusted them. Young people do trust. The oppressed do what the oppressors tell them out of love. And they trusted them. They trusted Katork. They trust the teachers. They trust the authority figures. The idea of authority, which they represented, was associated in our minds with a greater insight and a more humane wisdom. But the first death we saw shattered this belief. So, you know, you talk about your ideals and the praise and don't be a coward, go join the fucking war. But when you join the fucking war and then you see somebody get their head blown off, fuck your words, fuck your ideas. War is fucking hell. They had to recognize that our generation was more to be trusted. We have to recognize that our generation was more to be trusted than theirs. They surpassed us only in phrases and in cleverness. The first bombardment showed us our mistake, and under it, the world as they had taught it to us broken pieces. While they continued to write and talk, we saw the wounded and dying. While they taught that duty to one's country is the greatest thing, we already knew that death throes are stronger. But for all that we were no mutineers, no deserters, no cowards. They were very free with all these